Knowledge is power, and this is powerful stuff. Wellness Education Cannabis Advocates of Nevada present the WeCan 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour with your hosts Michael McAuliffe and Jen Solis. For the next 60 minutes, we'll take an in-depth look at the cannabis reform revolution sweeping the nation. The phone lines are open at 731-1230. That's 731-1230 or toll free. 1-866-820-5528. That's 1-866-820-KLAV. Now, let's bring on the hosts. Here is Michael McAuliffe and Jen Solis.
Good afternoon, everybody. Here we are in Las Vegas. We're going to be talking about cannabis news for the next 60 minutes. Please give us a call if there's something that interests you. And for the next 60 minutes, we'll have news. For this first portion, we'll have the local news. What do we have from the local news, Michael?
Hi, this is Michael McAuliffe reporting on what we've got going. Before we actually get to the stories, last week I was working on a breaking story that was talking about the fact that state regulators in the Attorney General's office were saying that they would deny or revoke licenses to private investigators who were servicing the medical cannabis industry.
How did that go?
Well, actually, a spokesperson for the Attorney General's office denied all knowledge of that threat. And they said that sort of thing would have to come through to go to the Deputy AG's office for a ruling, and she's been out sick, and nothing like that has happened. So we're at a point where we have this private investigator saying, yeah, this absolutely happened, and the state saying, no, it hasn't happened at all.
Did he have a memo or any proof, or was it just a threatening phone call?
This was a phone call. This was a phone call.
Okay.
I'm just hoping at this point that merely by bringing it to light and the incongruity between these two state departments having different agendas, that we will put a quash on any potential effort by the AG's office to slow down this program. Just shining the light of publicity on it, I think, will help.
Oh yeah, for certain.
Absolutely. So as we get into to local news here, we see an ongoing struggle between the county, the cities, and the state over control of this new industry. And even as the patients are celebrating decisions by the city of Las Vegas and Clark County to move forward with this, the applicants for these businesses are now going to go through a more politicized process in the approval of their licenses. Rather than just leaving this for business departments to license up as they would a convenience store, the elected officials are now taking a role in choosing exactly which businesses are going to receive the limited number of licenses that are out there. Henderson and North Las Vegas, of course, have banned these or enforced moratoriums, but both Las Vegas and the county are moving forward. In the case of Las Vegas, as we reported a couple of weeks ago, the city council has decided to move forward in drafting the regulations without authorizing the implementation. They're buying the blueprints, but they haven't closed on the house yet. This split that's happening really speaks to the still controversial nature of medical cannabis within the minds of those in elected office. The people are wildly in support of this, and yet the elected officials still treat it as a third-rail issue and are deathly afraid of it.
But they're okay with prostitution and gambling.
Oh, absolutely. Well, they're long-established traditions in Nevada.
In Nevada?
And I'll come back to that in just a couple of minutes. But Mary Beth Scow, one of our Clark County commissioners, said it's important for us to have as much control over this as possible and not to cede it to the state. Do it by a special use permit, so it's on a case-by-case basis. So we're seeing exactly where these are. And, that it makes sense that the county wants local control over these establishments. No doubt about
absolutely.
it. It does. And yet the statutes that have come down talk about a concurrent regulatory process.
They run side by side and they work together, and or having seemingly work together.
Yeah, in a perfect world, but unfortunately, in the real world, there are turf battles. Even those within the same state, we see these things happening. Clark County is certainly leading the way here by really moving forward and saying, if the cities don't want these facilities, the county will take them all. And really, that was the impetus that got the Las Vegas City Council moving in a direction where they ordered the blueprints, as I said, and designed the regulations.
Exactly. And the other thing that people that I think that may have turned or shaped this is that people ask the city, it's going on in your city anyway. Do you just not want the money from this?
Absolutely.
And then okay, money's involved now. Let's start paying attention. I mean, Sparks has just gone forward and says that that they will allow staff to move forward and make amendments to their city ordinances. So even Sparks is getting on board with this.
Absolutely. And what you see happening here is, as these cities are realizing the economic potential, they don't want to lose out on that revenue. Our Las Vegas councilman, Steve Ross, said there are other localities that will take these, meaning the regulations that the city of Las Vegas is designing, and will use them. I still think that we as a city need to be in control of our destiny. This is a local government issue. And back in September, when Jen, you and I and a number of other advocates went before the City Council to object to the moratorium, Steve Ross at that time said, other counties or other cities are going to follow what we're doing, which is why we said putting a moratorium was a terrible idea, because it gives license to other municipalities to do the same. But now that moratorium is set to expire next month and the city is moving ahead with these regulations, Steve Ross is staying true to his line there in saying that other municipalities will follow. So if Las Vegas does develop a good, cogent set of regulations, we can only hope that most of the municipalities in the city will follow.
That the city's moratorium, the date is St. Patrick's Day. So, it'll be a different green for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And we'll see what happens. And hopefully we would have other counties in the state following along with what Clark County does. But I really think that there's little hope for that. Clark County is moving forward in a very aggressive manner to implement the will of the people, whereas the other counties are still looking back with fondness to the 1950s, or maybe it's the 1850s.
I'm not really sure about that. The assistant city manager in Sparks is going forward with growth facilities, at least inside the jurisdiction, because it makes sense in Sparks, Nevada. You can grow and not have to use as much air conditioning up there. The city council members voted unanimously to allow staff to move forward in making amendments to city ordinances that would allow for business licensing of medical marijuana dispensaries operating within the city. They're talking. Councilman Ed Lawson said during a council meeting that they're opening the ability to move forward at some time in the future, but it doesn't mean that Sparks is going to do anything. So once again, even though they say they're going forward, it's basically just like the city. They're buying the blueprints and not even closing on the house. Don't even have a down payment for the house.
Absolutely, but they're covering their bases, and in all fairness, they're not going to be like Colorado was back in 2010, when if you wanted to open a dispensary or a cultivation facility, all you had to do was go down to City Hall and get a business license. There's a lot more control in this process here, and part of the reason for that is the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. has signaled that the more regulations and the better regulated a medical cannabis industry in a given state is, the less likely that the federal government will come in, intervene, and shut down those businesses. So it makes sense that both the state, the counties, and also the cities here are taking a hard look at really crafting some tight regulations, because the more that they can do that, the stronger 10th Amendment case that the state has to tell the feds to just keep their nose out of it. It's a terminology called occupying the field, and what it means is by the state and the local governments staking out their claim in this legal territory. It does not give the feds room to move in.
No, it doesn't.
So we're going to see this process go on through the balance of the year because not every place is going to be ready as quickly as the state or Clark County will. But I think what we'll see is as these first dispensaries, first cultivation facilities open, the sky doesn't fall, the kids don't turn into pot-eyed zombies, that these other municipalities who have, potholes and broken sewers and other infrastructure problems are going to be looking at the revenue there. And
well, I'll tell you, Colorado Springs really did. Colorado Springs was in bankruptcy when their dispensaries were allowed. And this is just the dispensaries, not the retail. With less than a year, they were in the black. And when they started realizing all of the money that was coming in from this, nobody wanted to miss the boat. What I've heard is that Nevada is trying to make a model for the nation of what the nation would do for complete legalization and also for medical dispensaries. First of all, with medical dispensaries, and then, just my wishful thinking or pipe dreams that we're going to have complete legalization soon.
Well, I think that in one way or another, it's going to happen. It's inevitable. Whether that soon is next year or 2 or 3 years, there's no doubt that it's going to happen. But at this stage, other than an assembly bill which was introduced in the last session, the state has not done anything in the direction of overall legalization. It is purely focused, and our bureaucrats seem to have their hands full, with getting enough buds to patients and deal with a medical issue. So I think that legalization is going to wait until another legislative session or until the voters demand it.
Sure. I mean, this is how this passed initially is by voter initiative, by ballot initiative in 1999, and then again in 2001 to make it law. And so there are a couple of ways to make cannabis legal through a couple different avenues.
Absolutely, and back in that second vote, which ultimately enshrined that initiative into the Constitution, the voters approved it by a 65% margin. Over the past dozen years since that time, the voter preference for this issue has grown to and stays steady at about 75%. And we're seeing those numbers in polls for support for medical cannabis across the nation. So it's really one of the reasons that Nevada lobbied successfully to get an early primary slot in the presidential process was because our state leaders were able to convince those policymakers who set the dates of the primaries that Nevada is representative of the nation, and certainly in this area it is. So, and like most of the country, we're seeing that the people are far ahead of this issue. I saw something in the Las Vegas business press just yesterday talking about banks finding complications for financing the cannabis businesses. And
is it from the FDIC insurance?
Well, no, it's not that. It's that even though the Department of Justice a couple of weeks ago issued guidelines for banks to work with medical cannabis businesses or legal recreational cannabis businesses in Washington and Colorado, the banks are still iffy about it because it hasn't been approved by Congress. We have a letter from DOJ issuing guidelines, but there is still no real force of law behind it. Sure, it's just like they issue memos, but there are no strict guidelines and there are no laws in place, just like the Holder memo. It's memos that come down, but these memos that come down are just that. They really don't have, they're not enforceable. They're just suggestions. Yes, and the Holder memo ultimately turned out to be nothing more than just a puff of air to the dismay of people who took it at a serious value and staked their liberties and their fortunes on it. So I don't blame the banking industry for taking a jaundiced view of government intentions. So the problem is that if dispensaries open in Clark County this year, when their owners, their managers are having their cash deposits, they're not going to be able to go to the bank with them. They're going to be sitting on piles of cash, which is going to make them a target for robberies. If you have these places that are making, $5,000, $10,000, $50,000 a day in sales, whatever it's going to be, it's going to be awfully tempting once you've had a few days,
accumulation
retail sales. Yeah, and so it's going to be it's going to be more of a challenge for law enforcement than if the government would just allow these things. These legitimate businesses to use legitimate channels. Well, we're seeing that in Clark County. We think that although Wells Fargo and Bank of America have said that they're not going to do it, some of the smaller local banks and credit unions look like they may work with these industries. So we'll see what happens.
Wells Fargo
there.
said that they're not going to work with these industries?
That's what they've said here.
And neither did Bank of America?
Yep, that's exactly what they said. We have a fellow named Tony Timmons, who is a Wells Fargo spokesman in Las Vegas. He said, we're reviewing the guidelines issued by the U.S. Treasury and the Deputy Attorney General's memorandum, but their policy is not to bank marijuana businesses based on federal law under which the sale and use of marijuana is still illegal. B of A would not comment on it. So according to the San Francisco-based ArcView Group, which is an investment group, at a market research firm, the legal cannabis industry is going to produce $2.57 billion in revenue this year. And Aaron Smith, the chairman of the National Cannabis Industry Association, said that the legal marijuana market will be a $10 billion business by 2018.
I just saw something that said that cannabis would produce $189 billion in tax revenue for Colorado. Some crazy numbers like that.
Million, not billion. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it must have been.
We'll get to that in the next block.
Sure. Right now we're going to go on a break, and we'll catch you right back here with the WeCan 702 show. Do you need help getting your Nevada medical marijuana card? Dr. Reefer is now accepting new patients. There are no medical records required. We have a doctor on staff to give you a thorough physical examination. There is a 99% approval rate for patients. They also have a money-back guarantee. If you don't qualify, you don't pay. Free consultation is available. Call 702-428-0000. 702-428-0000 to get your Nevada medical marijuana card today. The Von Dank Group offers turnkey solutions for all your cannabis needs, bringing transparency and responsibility to a young, budding industry. Helping patients by producing the cleanest, safest, and most potent medicines and infusibles possible. The Von Dank Group is a design, management, and consulting corporation with over 30 years of industry experience and knowledge of the dispensary, edibles, infusible kitchen, and large-scale cultivation of cannabis manufacturing facilities. Let the Von Dank Group help you grow your cannabis business from seed to green. www.vondank.com.
The WeCan 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour is the nation's only broadcast radio show where you can get the latest news from Nevada and beyond. Learn about the local billion-dollar industry and cannabis reform revolution, which is sweeping the nation. Join host Michael McAuliffe, Jen Solis, and their guests every Tuesday afternoon from 4 to 5 here on KLAV. Knowledge is power, and this is powerful stuff. The WeCan 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour, this Tuesday afternoon at 4. You're listening to the WeCan 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour. The phone lines are open at 731-1230. Now, here again, your hosts, Michael McAuliffe and Jen Solis.
Welcome back. Well, as we look beyond Nevada, we see that that the spirit of entrepreneurship is strong in America. And in one of the greatest displays of that spirit in modern history, a California Girl Scout has been selling cookies outside of a San Francisco medical marijuana dispensary.
Brilliant.
Danielle Lay, 13, set up shop in front of the Green Cross on Monday, selling 117 boxes in just 2 hours. That's just under a box a minute.
Wow, that is incredible.
That's pretty awesome. The Green Cross said that Lay's mother contacted the dispensary beforehand and asked for permission to set up the table. And the owners welcomed the girl, and they bought a few boxes. A representative for the Girl Scouts of the USA said that the decision where to sell cookies is ultimately up to the parents. Our number one concern is safety of the girls, said the representative. As long as they're following our safety guidelines, we trust our parents to make the decision for their daughters based on the communities they live in. It's a good idea. The Girl Scouts, absolutely. The Girl Scouts sometimes award the cadet marketing badges to scouts who successfully create a business campaign. Well, ladies, I think we've found your nominee.
Right on. But compare and contrast, there's a little girl in Colorado that says that she's not allowed to sell her Girl Scout cookies outside a cannabis shop. Rachel Trujillo, the chief marketing officer for the Girl Scouts of Colorado, told the Huffington Post, "Our position is pretty simple. For years in the council, we've said it's not appropriate for Girl Scouts to sell cookies outside of an adult-oriented business, and marijuana dispensaries fall right in line with this policy. There's a place for everything, and just like a liquor store or a gun show, a marijuana dispensary isn't the place for young girls to be selling cookies." I happen to disagree with that. You know, those little green wearing crack dealers. You see them outside Vaughn's daily tempting you. You know, my son's a Boy Scout, and he just hangs his head every time he walks by because he knows the $4 Thin Mints in the freezer. Oh gosh.
Oh, absolutely. I love those cookies. And there's no problem with selling them outside of a Walgreens or a CVS or a Rite Aid or something like that.
And they sell alcohol and tobacco.
Yes, they do. And so there's a little bit of hypocrisy in there, but
and a discrepancy within the I guess the Colorado they're trying to, is it a knee-jerk reaction?
I guess because cannabis is completely legal in Colorado, whereas in California it's only medical use. So it seems that the Girl Scouts I guess are individual social laboratories just like the states.
But you know what? It says also that cookie sales aren't allowed outside bars, strip clubs, or casinos. And I've never seen them outside bars, strip clubs, or casinos. But in Las Vegas, can you imagine how those would sell? Oh, my goodness. I don't know about a strip club, but a casino or a bar?
Absolutely. But, to be fair, the casinos don't want any competition. They want you to go onto their property. They don't have any clocks. They make it easy to get in, hard to get out. They want you to stay there and spend all your money there. They don't want to split their take with the Girl Scouts.
Well, it's only $4, and if it'd keep me at a machine, I don't think the casino would care.
Well, that's true. So, continuing on in Colorado, it's interesting that the governor of Colorado, John Hickenlooper, is discouraging the other states from legalizing pot. He says, "I urge caution" at a National Governors Association meeting in Washington, D.C. last Friday. He says that pot doesn't make people smarter, doesn't make people healthier. Well, he doesn't know about medical then. He added that state governments don't know what the unintended consequences are going to be. I don't think governments should be in the position of promoting things that are inherently not good for people, he said, noting that Colorado has implemented a robust regulatory system on this. He's a Democrat. He's been a vocal opponent of pot legalization from the start, going so far as to say that he hates his state's legal weed experiment, but he also said that he thinks the drug war has been disaster. So he wants to have
somebody
it both
who's
ways.
Not getting reelected.
Yeah, well, and the thing about Hickenlooper is he has spent years as a member of the Coors beer family hawking alcohol to people, and so he
really the
yes.
hypocrisy.
Oh,
you know what? Coors isn't much of a beer anyway.
I'm not a beer drinker, so I wouldn't know.
Well, it's just like water, kind of.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what they say. It's that cold Rocky Mountain water. They do that. They pass a little hops through it, and it's done. So anyway, I hope Coors is not an advertiser, because I think they won't be anymore then.
Well, no. That was my personal opinion, and all your personal opinions are your own on KLAV.
Oh, absolutely. But Hickenlooper announced that the state's total pot sales for the next fiscal year are now expected to reach about $610 million. That's $200 million more than the earlier estimates that that they had.
So what is he arguing against? Re-election?
Well, you know, what he's arguing, he's protecting his turf, basically.
What,
why
the
would
prisons?
he want other
Supermax
why would
prisons
he
in
want
Colorado?
other states to legalize when Colorado has people coming to there from all over the country to buy their legal pot? You know, in Rhode Island, the governor Chafee said that Lincoln Chafee said that, you know, with all the bad weather we've got back home, all the potholes, we ought to have revenue to go to infrastructure.
Potholes.
Pot for potholes is what he said. So he's supporting it, and you know. This is going to generate so much money that in just a few years, the states and the municipalities are not going to be able to live without it.
They're not going to be able to ignore it for sure. We do have a caller on the line.
That's
if
our
you
interview.
Oh, it is our interview. Okay,
Yes,
we have a caller on the line, and we're going to be taking it in just a minute. The next story is that marijuana may prevent blindness in retinitis pigmentosa sufferers. It's been long accepted that marijuana has direct benefits for glaucoma patients, but a new study suggests that pot may be also prevent blindness for sufferers of another disease. The disease is retinitis pigmentosa, a degenerative condition that destroys millions of microscopic light centers known as photoreceptors in the human eye, and there's no known cure. But researchers at Alicante in Spain may have stumbled on an effective therapy with marijuana. They say it may be able to significantly slow down the destruction of those light sensors. So not only does it reduce the pressure, the intraocular pressure for glaucoma, but it also slows down the destruction of the light sensors in your eyes. To conduct the study, the scientists gave a synthetic cannabinoid to a group of rats for a period of 90 days and then found out the rats had a whopping 40% reduction of loss in photoreceptors.
So you're the medical expert. What does that mean in layman's terms?
What does this mean in layman's terms? That the intraocular tissue is not being destroyed at the same rate that it is if you're not smoking cannabis. Not only that, it does reduce intraocular pressure by promoting drainage inside the eye and also just not promoting buildup.
And to be clear, though, I don't think it's just about smoking. I think, you know, just ingestion in whatever form will have that effect. You know, so we're certainly not suggesting here that anybody smoke anything, as opposed to vaporization or anything else, or use cannabis at all. We're out here just saying that that we need to reevaluate this substance in the light of science, and that people should not get criminal records for trying alternative treatments for their health problems.
Once again, researchers don't even know the exact mechanism by which the cannabinoids delay the vision loss in the retinitis pigmentosa patients. They always stress that more research is needed to form definitive conclusions. But I have to tell you, Michael, that you know that anesthesia, they don't know how anesthesia works in people exactly.
Really?
Straight anesthesiologists who are doctors who study for years and years and years. Some of the mechanisms are unknown within the brain, and yet they put people under anesthesia every day.
Amazing. So the more we know, the better off we're going to be. And until we change things in Washington, D.C. to allow for more research here, we're going to be hobbled in treatment of any number of diseases. And we'll close out this segment by noting that Minnesota is also considering passing legislation to legalize the medical use of cannabis, but it's the police agencies that are standing in the way. There's evidence that the politicians in the state are open to passing such a bill because a similar effort was approved in 2009 before being vetoed by then Governor Tim Pawlenty. This time around, the Governor Mark Dayton said he'd sign the bill, but not without support of Minnesota law enforcement agencies. And so far, not a single agency has lent its support to the bill.
That's ironic. Did you see the latest on? Did you see the latest news? That there have been some cops caught on duty getting high on duty, dispatch,
Really?
on camera.
No, I have not seen that. Where did that happen?
I think that happened somewhere like in like Maine or Rhode Island, somewhere like that.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. But, what I find telling about what's going on in Minnesota is that the head of one police agency there openly admitted that he was worried that legalizing weed for medical purposes might make it harder for police to get federal drug war dollars, because Minnesota, like many other states, receives millions in aid from the federal government for anti-drug money every year. And asset seizures from drug raids have become an integral part of state police budgets. So
can't they just ramp up on the meth and the coke and stuff like that? Or do you think that would be too much competition with the CIA?
One could only hope. But anyway, we're going to take another break here for a minute, and then we'll be back with our guest, Joe Brezny of the Nevada Cannabis Association.
The Von Dank Group offers turnkey solutions for all your cannabis needs, bringing transparency and responsibility to a young, budding industry. Helping patients by producing the cleanest, safest, and most potent medicines and infusibles possible. The Von Dank Group is a design, management, and consulting corporation with over 30 years of industry experience and knowledge of the dispensary, edibles, infusible kitchen, and large-scale cultivation of cannabis manufacturing facilities. Let the Von Dank Group help you grow your cannabis business from seed to green. www.vondank.com. WeCan 702 is a Nevada cannabis community. We are a 501c3 nonprofit that meets in Southern Nevada. We are a social group that started in Las Vegas for patient support. We've been active in the community for over 5 years. If you'd like to join us on any of our events or parties, please contact us through Facebook at WeCan 702, on Meetup at www.meetup.com/WeCan 702. Our website is www.wecan702.org. Be a part of the Nevada Cannabis Reform Revolution. Please join us and donate today.
Cannabis has been used as a healing medicine for over 5,000 years with no toxic side effects. Is it right for you? The professionals at Dr. Reefer are here to help. Now accepting new patients. Make an appointment today at 428-0000. Bring your medical records, or if you don't have them, their staff will work to document your qualifying condition with a 99% approval rate. If you have any of the following conditions: cancer, AIDS, muscle spasm diseases, severe nausea, severe pain, Crohn's disease, glaucoma, or PTSD, call Dr. Reefer today for your free consultation and their money-back guarantee. If you don't qualify, you don't pay. Call 702-428-0000 to get your Nevada medical marijuana card today.
This is the WeCan 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour. Call us with your questions at 731-1230. Now, here again, your hosts, Michael McAuliffe and Jen Solis.
Welcome back. With us this afternoon is Joe Brezny, director of the Nevada Cannabis Association, which was formed recently to harness the energy of this emerging industry. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Good to be here.
Our pleasure. Let's get right into it. In 2010, I was a founding board member of the National Cannabis Industry Association, which is a trade association that focuses on lobbying in Washington, D.C. to reform the nation's cannabis laws. Nevada Cannabis Association is an offshoot of that. Could you please explain what the NCA is and does?
Well, the National Cannabis Industry Association is our parent organization. We're a state affiliate of them. We had to meet certain criteria to qualify to be a state affiliate, and the first being all of our members are members of the National Association. And so that's the organization that lobbies on Capitol Hill and pushes for banking reform and tax reform. The Nevada Cannabis Industry Association is that local affiliate that speaks to, where they lobby Congress. When we have an association that has members that are producing and we have open shops, we'll be getting together as an industry and lobbying the state legislature together, and then also talking with the local city councils and county commissions. So what the national industry does in D.C., we do in Carson City, and then with the local municipalities.
So what are your plans for the NCA, and what will it do for Nevada businesses?
Well, it gives the market a place to come together and speak with one voice. They concentrate on three basic divisions. The first is continuing education, where they'll establish a set of standards as to what they want everyone that's a member of the association to study and to learn and to adhere to. The second is lobbying, where they will have a lobbyist for the association that engages on behalf of the members who are speaking as a group. In most industries, larger companies will also employ their own lobbyists, and we'll try and work in concert with them.
Okay.
But the local association would represent anyone who's a member. The large companies, small companies, people at all levels will be represented by hopefully one voice, and bring everyone together under that. And then the third area that they operate in is political engagement and political operations. Elected officials tend to listen a little closer to large, organized, educated groups that show up at the polls. You guys know that.
Yes,
so
yes.
It's something where having all of the employees, all of the patients, and all of the advocates rowing the boat in the same direction is critical.
Okay. Well, sitting on several nonprofit industry boards, I found that people in the cannabis industry are fiercely independent, and trying to get them to agree on a course of action is like trying to herd cats. How will the NCA rein them in to actually achieve results?
Yeah, I couldn't describe it better, except maybe to say kittens, because they're not quite as well behaved as grown cats sometimes. It's difficult because you have fiercely independent people, and we see this in some other associations that we represent in other industries. You know, these are independent, successful business people. Your boards at these are people who are doing this well, and they don't always agree. So the first rule that we have is a do no harm rule, where everyone agrees that we'll duke it out behind closed doors on what we want the official industry position to be. And if there's a ton of opposition to something, you may just not take an official position, but what we never do is beat each other up. We've got to take care of the industry as a whole. So it's something where
you have to present a unified front. Even if you do have cross-fighting, it needs to. You're right. It needs to be done behind closed doors, not out in front of anybody.
Yep. And so that's the basic philosophy is let's publicize the things that we agree on. Let's promote the things that we agree on and try and achieve those things, and then try and disagree as quietly as we can.
Okay.
E pluribus unum.
Yep.
Will your organization assist prospective clients with their applications, or are you more focused on working on these businesses once they've made it through the approval process?
Yes and yes, and let me explain that. We would love to be starting up in an industry that is formed, where we have people that already have licenses and already have businesses, because that's the traditional model for a trade association. Since we don't have that, we have people that believe that they will be approved for licenses, and we also have ancillary businesses that we know will be operating in this space. Software companies like MJ Freeway are members. The national companies that provide to more than one dispensary, they're joining. But for the Nevada-specific folks, it's a little bit of a wish that they will get a license and a hope that they will get a license.
So what happens to those people?
Industry.
What happens to those people if they don't get a license and they're not an ancillary business? Now they're just part of a trade association that really, I guess they would just fall off.
Yeah, that's one of the weird things about the startup, and so I'm actually encouraging those guys, just pay monthly. Don't pay because you can either pay up front for a year or you can pay monthly. And I'm not saying that any individual person won't get it, but I don't think my board's going to bat 1,000. I don't think that all of them will get their dispensary licenses. So it's something where just the law of numbers, we don't know. This is the first time we're doing this. So some people will drop off. Some people will add on once the licenses are established. And so we're getting through this unknown phase at first. And then once the licenses all come out, we'll sit down. But mostly at this point, I'm trying to have a few people, or hopefully the majority of my people, that get through the process and have the basic structure in place of how a trade association should engage local elected officials.
So do you have a part of your trade association or your board who is not going after a license, who is going to remain constant and kind of help with steerage, such
Correct,
as yourself?
Yes, I'm staff, so I won't have any ownership portion. But our policy is that I can't own anything, and no individual No individual dispensary or company can pay me directly. That way everyone knows that they're getting a fair shake when
Sure.
they talk to me. So I'll stay on as staff as long as they have a contract with me. Then we have a chairman that's an investment banker that is working with cannabis investments across the spectrum. His presence in the industry is pretty solid. We have an attorney for the ArcView Group, the ArcView Investment Group, who is also our corporate counsel. His presence will be solid regardless because he's in the industry. And then we have other ancillary business members who we believe will, I think the odds of some of these people not selling their products to someone, either be software or chocolate bars and other edibles, that kind of thing, I think it's pretty low. So I'm anticipating we'll have some set of a shakeup once the licenses come out in the industry and in the association both. But we're trying to get the basics set so that people have a plan and a program to follow once everything comes out, and we've got a real industry.
Sure.
And actually, that happened in 2010 with the founding of the National Cannabis Industry Association, where the initial board changed after about 6 months, to some extent because of federal action. And as people were forced to close their facilities, you had certain board members drop off. But it was a robust enough industry that more people picked up, and they're doing quite well from what I understand. Here in Nevada, state and county regulators are trying to craft parameters of the application process to meet an April 1st deadline, as you know. And they're making some pretty impressive progress. They were saying, we're not going to be able to do this, but they're getting these things in a very timely fashion. But there's some disagreement over when this application window is going to open. What have you heard, and what's your opinion of how this process is proceeding?
It is an opinion. It's a gut and like a gut feeling on this. It's an educated gut feeling, but
Sure.
And I think that's the best that people have right now. But from the movement that I'm seeing, I would expect Clark County in the South to be releasing some of their guidelines for the special use permit that they've been talking about within a couple of weeks, and then I would expect them to have the process in place by early May. So I would watch Clark County very closely if you're looking at southern Nevada. I would expect Las Vegas, the city of Las Vegas, to follow suit because they didn't say no. They said, we're going to figure out how to do this, from what I was hearing. And I believe that Henderson has taken themselves out of the running till midsummer, so that's pretty much a known entity. And then North Las Vegas hasn't formally said no, and so I would anticipate an answer from them on the same timeline as Las Vegas. So I would say the first round being Clark County government, and the second round being the city of Las Vegas and the city of North Las Vegas. And then in the north, the city of Sparks and the city of Reno and Washoe County are all having discussions on the issue, and so I anticipate them following the same timeline as Las Vegas. I think Clark County will get out in front a little faster than the other major municipalities will fall into place.
But let me ask you then, Joe, what about this 10-day application window? I don't see how what you're talking about, these guys are going to come on for Clark County first, and then maybe a few municipalities, and maybe a few more. There's only 10 days that they're going to open these license applications. So if these municipalities don't get on board, they're going to lose out for at least a year, and in fact, if nobody loses their license in that time, there may not be licenses issued next year.
That could be a worst case scenario. Yeah, I think that with what we're hearing from the state, though, that the actual application isn't going to be out until June or July. I think
I'm hearing the same.
Yeah, I am too.
So if the locals have their check sheet in place or whatever they're coming up with, be it for a privileged license or a special use permit or just a background, the locals should charge for this. They should charge for people to do a sort of application with them. The idea being that people can spend a little bit of money to see if they're in the right realm with where they want to have their location and with their business plan, because the locals should have a right to have an opinion on this. It's expressly put in the law that they can say no, they can say maybe, they can say where, and to a degree they can say who. And so I think that process will wrap up in the next 2.5 months, and then that'll be ahead of health releasing the actual application. And then that's the sprint. You have the application out in July, and we're backed up now. We're backed up on the timeline. If the application's out in July, you're probably talking about the first openings at the end of the year or early the next year. So it's something where we're behind a little, but I don't think it will or can slip much more.
Right.
Oh, do you see your organization, Joe, as your organization's role is primarily a trade association, a lobbying group, an educational institution, or is it some kind of combination of these roles?
It's primarily a trade association. The lobbying that they do is just on behalf of the association positions, so it's few and far between safeguards for the industry, just looking out for anyone really targeting you. And then as an educational institution, it wouldn't be really for the outside world. It would be more for CE courses for members on the basics of how to operate their business. We'll have a lot of industry best practices and a lot of knowledge to share. So we're going to look to partner with some of with you guys actually to help with the education part of it.
Well, thank you so much.
You've got the institutional knowledge in the state right now.
That's why we asked.
Yep.
On the medical side of this issue, the Nevada citizenry routinely polls at a 75% support level, as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast. And a survey released last autumn by the Nevada Retail Association, which I'm sure you've seen, shows a 54 to 42% support by Nevadans for fully legalized cannabis if the proceeds go to education. Yet there's a very vocal minority that predicts the end of civilization as we know it if our state and our country reform these laws. And a lot of that unfortunately comes from law enforcement, and whether that's because they've been indoctrinated or perhaps because there's a lot of overtime pay and federal funding in support of prohibition, as we mentioned in an earlier story in Minnesota. What kind of experience have you had in speaking to those people who are opposed to reform? We were speaking a little earlier, and you mentioned some law enforcement.
I've had experiences from the very good end of the spectrum to the very bad end of the spectrum. The very bad end of the spectrum is something that you basically captured the argument in the first part of your question here, where you were talking about how medical is polling at 75% because the American people recognize that this has medicinal value. And anyone who saw Sanjay Gupta's weed documentary,
which is like the whole world.
Yeah, it's really tough to deny it at that point. And so there is a vocal minority, and I think those are the people that it's money. I think it's a money issue because the vocal minority that I hear screaming, it's not all police. It's the narc programs that are being affected by the seizures. It's the people who are losing money. They're afraid. And then it's also there are good rehab programs and there are bad rehab programs. And there are bad rehab programs that are set up so that a kid gets caught smoking a joint once and his choices are label yourself an addict or go to jail. Well, those guys are losing money too. So those are the really vocal minorities that are screaming about this. The rest of what I've seen, and that's the bad part. Those are the guys that come at you and they're like, how can you do this to the kids? And I say, come on, give me a break. We're operating in America under your system. This is the war on drug system, and it has higher youth usage rates than Holland, which has tolerance, and much higher youth usage rates than Portugal, where it's been completely decriminalized and treated as a healthcare issue. And so if you look at the facts, if you look at the long-term studies, and where this has been decriminalized or tolerated for a long time, you see the lowest usage rates in Europe, you see the lowest usage rates in the region, and much lower than America consistently. And so when we're talking about what is hurting the kids, it's the war on drugs, because no one's checking ID at high school. No one's checking ID. They just want to make money. The guys that I represent have millions of dollars invested in these businesses. They are not going to risk their license to let an ounce go out the back door, let someone sell to a kid. They're just not going to do it.
Or even let a pound go out the back door, or
exactly.
10 or 100 pounds. It is just not economically worth it.
It's not worth it with the amount of oversight. And that's where the good side of police action comes into play in this. So I was in a grow in San Francisco, and they had me wear the blacked out shades to get there because they have cash on site, and once we fix banking, they won't have to do that anymore. But the police know where it is, and they made a phone call while I was there, and these two police officers in San Francisco Special Patrol come trotting in, and it kind of scared me. I'm standing in the middle of a few $1 million worth of cannabis, and these two police officers in uniform come jogging in. And so they were there. They're there all the time. They're all over these places because these places aren't doing anything wrong. The cops want to have access because they usually have a ton of cameras in not so great neighborhoods to make sure that their investment's protected. And so this is something where in the more mature markets, we see there is no boogeyman here. This is being done very, very well in Denver. It's being done very well across the country in markets that are established. And the police that are there are finding that we are good partners for the community, that we provide funding and that we help prevent crime. So it's something where once the education is done, I'm finding that most police are coming around. It's just the guys whose money and whose budgets are threatened, they're clinging to the old, I mean, they're easy to beat on message. They're clinging to the old talking points. Whenever I hear someone say that there's no medicinal value and it's just an excuse for people to get high, I just cringe, not because they're hurting me or hurting my side, just because they're not going to get a majority of people around the Christmas dinner table to agree with them on that point. 75% of the people are on my side on that point. The only people that oppose this at this point are your hardcore conservatives and people whose money is being threatened by this.
The narcotic squad.
Yeah, so it's something where those are the guys that are screaming the loudest, and they're using that same old tired talking point that no one believes anymore. And honestly, when they do, it just helps us.
Joe, let me
absolutely.
let me stop you there for a moment. We've had someone patiently waiting on the phone, and so we want to get to him. I hear we've got JT calling, and JT, welcome.
Hello?
Yeah, you there? Go ahead.
Yes. Hey, how you guys doing?
We're doing great. What's your question?
Great. Well, I heard you guys talking about all this and the zoning and getting ready to set things up and everything, and it kind of sounds like a crapshoot. I want to kind of know what the patient's rights are going to be in Nevada when all this implementation takes place. And, you guys talk about how you're setting up Nevada to be the role model for the nation, when in reality you're setting up the new drug war by banning patients' rights to cultivate.
That's a great point.
What do you think about that?
Well, I would say first off that we're not banning anything. We're actually fighting for that. And the short answer, and we had Tick Segerblom on a couple of weeks ago, and he was the senator who wrote this law. He said he had to put that sunset provision in order to get law enforcement support, in order to pass the bill this time. But he is going to be in the next legislative session, and he promised that they're going to continue to work on this. And it doesn't sunset till after the next legislative session. So he wants to go in and fix that. He wants to get this industry up and running and then be able to show people that the sky isn't falling and that they're going to be able to move forward. So as far as that goes, and also there are so many exemptions that will allow people to continue to grow.
Exactly.
And that's something that WeCan worked very hard to get into the law over the last year. And so I don't think we're going to lose that.
I don't think we're going to lose that, because there are several people that do have money that want to retain their right to grow and not have to go to a dispensary, and so they may put their money behind lobbying for to keep the grow also.
Absolutely. And Joe, let me bring you back here and just ask, how can people find out more information about NCA, possibly joining if they want to get into this industry and moving forward?
The easiest way, our local website is about to launch, but everyone who's coming to us and is invited to join our ranks you have to join the National Association first, and so we get a list of everyone who has researched and joined there. Their website is theCannabisIndustry.org, CannabisIndustry.org.
With no spaces.
Correct. And so you can find out all the information about the National Association there, what their mission is, and then you can join on the website. Memberships start as low as $100 a month. The highest level membership is $500 a month. Our dues are exactly the same, but we have to have people join the National first, and then we speak with them about what the local can offer. And then if anyone wants just local information before our website is up and running, my email address is nvcannabis@gmail.com.
There you go. Well, Joe, thanks so much for coming on.
Yes, thank you.
We really appreciate the education and the knowledge that you
a lot.
have there. All right. Bye now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up another show. And
It went by very quickly.
it always does. There's so much to talk about in this industry that we're just going to have to get more airtime here in order to make this happen.
I think that we should go to a couple of days.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time, and keep fighting.